For the past year, my life had been a total shitstorm. It's my fault. It's my fault. There's no one to blame but me. I screwed it up. I messed up my marriage. I've messed up my career. I've even messed up my mind. I don't stand a chance of getting any of it back, but I'm determined that I'm going to try. Exactly 1 year ago today, a man showed up in my office while I was having fun with my boss. Suddenly, a middle-aged man in a cheap suit walked into my office. I have no idea how he got in, since I had definitely locked the door, but he was standing on the other side of my desk watching us. Brad and I jumped around him like crazy, putting everything back in place, and he stood there with a goofy grin. I distinctly remember yelling at him, "Who the hell are you and what do you want?" He just smiled and asked if I was Cheryl Hughes. I yelled again, "That's what it says on the door." "Of course I'm Cheryl, now what do you want?" He pulled a large manila envelope from under his coat, held it out to me and said in the calmest voice possible, "Madam, you are being served." At that moment, my life went upside down. Since then, I've lived every moment like a blur. Everything that came before is just a painful memory. Everything that came after is a blur. Only in the last couple months has my mind worked well enough to understand everything that happened. Thanks to a very sympathetic therapist, I now know, or better yet, understand what got my life into the mess it is. I'm now going to analyze every agonizing moment that led me to this turning point to make sure I didn't miss anything important. If I'm going to try to restart my life, I have to understand why I did what I did. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the captain. We've just been cleared to taxi to the runway and get in line for departure. We have 3 flights in front of us, so while we wait our turn, we will begin the pre-flight briefing. Once again, we want to thank you for flying Delta to Boston today. The video monitor above the aisle came to life. All carry-on items must be stored in a secure location. Blah, blah, blah. I've heard their prepared speech 1,000 times. I only have 2 hours to do everything before boarding, and I'm not going to waste time on something I've already heard. I know the drill. Now let's see. I have to start where all tragic stories begin, at the beginning. But where is that beginning, really? Did it begin when I was born, or when I got married, or when I joined Enterprise, or maybe the day I learned of my promotion? If my therapist is right, it all started in my childhood. But I don't need to go back that far to analyze the events that led to me running away from my husband, now ex, and my former home. I need to start from the moment I made the decision to cheat on him. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was an overcast Friday in October when my boss, Brad Paxton, called me into his office just before lunch. He said he had good news for me. "Cheryl, come in and close the door," Brad said with a wide smile. I sat in the chair across from his desk and waited for him to finish typing something into the computer, thinking back to my time at Enterprise. I had worked for Enterprise Research and Development and Brad for 8 years as one of the account executives. My job was to coordinate all the processes, tasks, technical documentation, and contractor interactions that Brad and 3 other executives coordinated with our 50 or so suppliers and end product customers. I'm good at my job, and after the first year I felt pretty confident in what I was doing and thought I could do anything. I was even so confident that I thought I could do any of my supervisors' jobs, and sometimes better than them. I have the education and work experience to handle their jobs. It's just that advancing in enterprise management is like trying to break through a brick wall with a marshmallow, especially for women. I set my sights on becoming the first female executive at Enterprise, and nothing was going to stand in my way. I have yet to break through the old boy network. Despite all that, I get along with everyone from the errand boy to the CEO, and I'm sure everyone likes me too. "Cheryl, I think I have some good news for you," Brad said as he leaned back in his huge executive chair. "What I'm about to tell you is being kept in the strictest confidence. Please don't repeat anything I'm about to say." So, let's begin. On Wednesday, Ambrose St. John informed the board that he intends to retire next May. This will create a vacancy in logistics for a line supervisor. It will be up to me to make a recommendation for his replacement. Right now, I have several qualified people who could take his place, but I have only one thing on my mind. You. Your work has been exemplary, your attitude has been exceptional, and your knowledge of enterprise procedures and contacts goes beyond what your current position requires. In short, you are a very qualified candidate for the position. But there are several other equally qualified candidates, some with more seniority than you. Now I just can't give the position to you and bypass everyone else. I have to publicize it and interview everyone who comes through HR. But in the end, it still comes down to my decision. Cheryl, I think you'll do a great job. I just can't figure out how badly you want to move up in the company. How strong is your ambition? What can you do to show me that you really want the position of supervisor? Mr. Paxton, since I've been here, I've worked hard to learn everything about everything. There's nothing I haven't done. There's no area I don't have experience in. I've even filled in for you when you were on vacation. And honestly, I've handled everything with ease. Now, I am more than ready for a new challenge, and a management position would be ideal. What can I do to prove to you that I am indeed the perfect candidate for the position? I've thought about it, he said with the same broad smile. I was thinking about getting out of the office where we could spend some time discussing how you could best prove yourself. How about lunch? I have an opening next Wednesday. How about we meet at Le Chateau, say, at noon on Wednesday? That way we can relax, be ourselves, and talk straight. And I'll pay the bill too. I don't see anything wrong with that, I said, smiling back at him. Do you want me to bring anything? No, just yourself. Thank you, Mr. Paxton, for giving me this opportunity. I won't disappoint you. I'm sure you won't disappoint, Cheryl. I'm sure you won't disappoint. La Chateau is one of the swankiest restaurants in all of Boston. The fact that it's in one of the many glass and chrome high-rises in the center of the business district doesn't make it any less discerning. I remember walking to the table where Brad was sitting waiting for me and thinking about the fact that someday I would have to invite Marty here. My dear husband works too much, and taking him out for a fancy dinner would be nice. Maybe I could even convince him to leave work a little early so I could stay home with my favorite afterward. Brad had already opened a bottle of wine and poured me a glass when I sat down at the table. We talked a bit about the duties of a logistics manager before ordering lunch. I tried to keep the price reasonable, but Brad insisted I splurge. It's on the company, he reminded me. As we ate, I talked about myself. I told him about my husband, my education, even my ambitions and dreams. After dessert, we sat down at the table to enjoy another glass of fine Merlot, and by then, I think I had told him the whole story of my life. Cheryl, we've talked a lot today about your ambitions and dreams, but you've never once said what you're willing to do to get my recommendation. I want only the best for Enterprise, and I will recommend the best person for the job, whoever that may be. But what can you do to tilt the odds in your favor? What will you do to make you stand out in my mind? I don't know what else I can do except to show you that I'm a hard worker and... No, I don't mean the things you list on your resume. I mean personal things. Like what? I asked. I hadn't quite caught his train of thought. Well, you agreed to have lunch with me today. How about next Monday we have lunch and continue our conversation? Okay, I can do that. And I want you to think about something. Next Monday, I want you to answer this question. Are you willing to do anything I ask you to do to get this job? I mean everything. Don't answer it now, just think about it and let me know on Monday. I think the right answer might tip the scales in your favor. Just think about it, and we'll talk. Waiter, check please. It wasn't until I got back to my office that I realized what he had just asked. He said, I mean anything. I had to decide if that anything was worth Brad's risk and reward. I spent the rest of the day off work thinking about it. I thought about it all weekend too. I'm sure Marty saw how far my mood had fallen. When we had lunch on Monday, I bluntly asked if what he said was what he meant. Did your I mean everything really mean what I think it meant? I asked. Are you suggesting we meet outside of work for a little hayride? Before I answer that, I need to ask you a couple questions. Are you recording this conversation? No. Why would I do that? Okay, then who did you discuss our conversation with? No one. Okay, then I'll answer your original question. Yes, I want the two of us to get to know each other much better, on a physical level. Does that answer your question? About as good an answer as one can get, I said. And the promotion depends on that. I don't want to say it outright, but if you're good to me, I'll be good to you in return, so to speak. I leaned over and whispered in his ear. Okay, Brad, I want the job. I really want the job. However, I have a few conditions. First, we never do anything after work. No dinners, no going out together, no venturing out to some rundown motel for a couple minutes. Everything we do at work during lunch, either in your office or mine. Even though we both have floor-to-ceiling windows, no one can look in because the window glass is covered with a film that makes it look like a mirror from the outside. We each have a desk, a couch, and a lock on the door. It will stay in our office and nowhere else. Secondly, absolutely no one will know about it. I mean no one. Thirdly, when I say it's over, that will be the end of it. If I think of any other conditions, I'll let you know. I agree, he whispered back. I think we should set up a regular Wednesday lunch meeting to discuss your progress. Say, every Wednesday at noon in your office? Okay, just remember to lock the door when you come in. And off it went. On Wednesday, my life ended. Brad and I had just started our status meeting. Suddenly, a man in a cheap suit walked through the door. I'm pretty sure I locked the door, but he walked in. The man just stood in front of my desk with a small smirk on his face. What the hell do you want? I shouted at him. Are you Cheryl Hughes? Was all he said. Of course I am. That's what it says on the door. Who are you and what do you want? He handed me a large manila envelope. I stared at it for a long time, then took it. Madam, you are being served, he said. He walked away with the same smirk on his face. I sank heavily into the chair. Brad stood next to me with a goofy look on his face. I opened the envelope and pulled out the papers. On top was a petition for dissolution of marriage. I was so stunned I couldn't speak. Brad reached out and tried to take the papers from my hands, but I recoiled. I tried to hold on to them, but the two of us scattered them across the table. There were a few pictures there too, face up. They showed my office, me, and... Carefully, I took one picture in my left hand, the other in my right. I looked at them and my whole life flashed before my eyes. In one of the pictures, I was showing my middle finger, holding it out to the phone. How the hell did he manage to... I never finished the sentence. I knew where they were coming from. I turned to look out the window. I saw another huge glass and chrome building on the opposite side of the street and realized that whoever had gotten those pictures had taken them from there. I ran over to the window, putting my hands to the glass and looking at the building across the street. I'm sure anyone who looked back at me would have seen the look of absolute horror on my face. At that moment, I realized that my life was over. My phone started ringing. I froze. I knew exactly who was calling. Not wanting to hear the voice on the other end, I slowly walked to the phone. Hello, I said with a sob. Tell Brad to leave, Marty growled. I sank back into the chair, holding the phone to my ear and resting my chin on my chest. Brad, get out. It's my husband. He started to say something nonsensical, and I jumped up and yelled at him. Just get the hell out. He knows all about us, asshole. If I were you, I'd get out of here and run as far away as possible. Marty may be an accountant, but he can kick your ass from here until Sunday. Now get out. When he left, I sat back down and turned my chair to face the window. I sat there waiting for Marty to say something that would put me out of my misery. He said, Cheryl, if our marriage has any chance of surviving, you must listen carefully and do what I say. No arguments, no hesitation. You have one chance and one chance only. Do you understand? Yes, I understand, I said through my tears. I'm not kidding, Cheryl. You only have one chance to save everything. Are you sure you understand? Yes, I wheezed. Okay, now here's what's going to happen. First, you're going to quit your job. Second, you're going to file a lawsuit against each of your 4 lovers and against Enterprise as a whole. Third, you're going to explain to me why. I stammered and sat there, sobbing silently. I was silent for a very long time. Finally, I realized I had to say something. I chose the wrong thing to say. But Marty, I have a lot invested in the enterprise. I'm about to become the first female manager of... Hello? Marty? Hello, are you there? He hung up. I dropped the phone and flew to the window, screaming and pounding on the glass. I can't tell you how long I pounded on the window before I fell to the floor and sobbed. I had ruined everything. Marty knew I was cheating on him and was going to divorce me. Oh my God, what have I done to him? I just laid on the floor and sobbed. Nah, I don't know how long I cried until I heard a knock on the door. I wiped my face as best I could and went to open it. There stood Ambrose with the most hateful look on his face I had ever seen, and behind his back I could see everyone in the office looking at us. You stinking bitch, he hissed at me. He then punched me in the face, knocking me to the floor. When I looked up, Tom and Brad grabbed his arms and dragged him out of my office. I was just sitting on the floor rubbing my cheek when one of the customer service executives reached up to close the door. Good job, slut, she said with a smile. I'm definitely getting a promotion now. See ya. How does everyone already know about my divorce papers? What was going on? I didn't realize anything except that Marty knew and was throwing me out. I started crying again and went back to my desk. I tried to call Marty back, but his phone had switched to voicemail. I tried calling probably a dozen times, but he didn't answer any of them. I left him only one message. Marty, I'm so sorry. 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 Please call me back and talk to me. I messed up big time and I need you to talk to me. Please call me. I'm desperate, Marty. Please call me back. He didn't call back. As I sat at my desk crying in anticipation of his call, I saw the flashing incoming email icon. A new message had arrived. Hoping it was from Marty, I quickly opened it. It said, "Watch what's going on in your office right under your nose." There was also a video attached. I clicked on the video and the screen changed to an image of me and Brad. I couldn't move my hand to press stop. I froze with the horror of what I was watching. I slid off the chair onto the floor and sobbed. When the two guards came in, I didn't hear them anymore. They helped me to my feet and told me that I had an hour to pack all my personal belongings into boxes, after which they were to escort me out of the building. They also handed me an envelope with a letter of dismissal. Somehow, through tears and sobs, I got all my things packed. As I was putting my things in boxes, I thought, 9 years of hard work and dedication at Enterprise went by in an instant with nothing but a slap on the wrist from one of my managers. I screwed up not only at Enterprise, but also in my relationship with Marty. I needed to pack everything into the car and get back to his house. I needed to talk to him and explain everything. Maybe I had a chance to save my marriage. Marty was gone. He had moved out a lot of his clothes and personal belongings and left me alone. There was a note from him on the kitchen table. It said, "Cheryl, don't call me, don't try to find me, don't come to my work, don't do anything. If you need to contact me, call my lawyer. His card is in the divorce papers. Sign them and let's get this over with quickly. You've ruined enough lives already." Marty, I was devastated to the core. I cried for 2 days straight, hoping Marty would come back and forgive me. But he didn't. I just sat in our house and waited to hear from him. Nothing. I read the divorce papers and it said, "Irreconcilable differences." He could have grabbed me by the throat and said adultery, so I guess that was his way of being nice. About a week after I left Enterprise, a lawyer called and said he would represent me in a case against Enterprise. I don't know how he got all the information, video and all, but he had everything, including all the emails from Enterprise's email system. Marty must have put him on my case. I thought I could get back to Marty if I did what he advised me to do. Quit my job, file a complaint against the managers in Enterprise and tell him the reasons why, then maybe we might have a chance. After the lawsuit was over, he might have listened to me. But he didn't. The lawyer was good at what he did. I told him everything and answered every question about every intimate detail of our dates. He sued each of the men in Enterprise for $1 million. After several meetings and one in-person meeting with Enterprise's lawyers, we came to a settlement. They gave me a little over $100,000 to, as they so eloquently put this sordid episode in the past. Enterprise fired 3 managers and Ambrose resigned, which was also part of the settlement agreement. After it was over, I called Marty's divorce attorney and told him I quit my job and sued Enterprise. Since I had done everything Marty wanted me to do, I asked when we could meet and talk. He simply asked, "Why did you put Marty on the phone too?" That question made me hysterical again. I couldn't say anything and hung up. I called him 3 more times, and each time he asked the same question, and each time I broke down. Eventually, I gave up. After a month of being alone, I called my cousin in Cincinnati and told her my problems. She said I should come and live with her and look for a new job there. Things had fallen apart in Boston, so a fresh start would be good for me. I pondered her words for a week before I signed the divorce papers and packed my bags. I left everything to Marty. I only took my clothes and a few memorabilia. Everything else I left behind. On the kitchen table, I left Marty a note with parting words and a request that he call me at my cousin's number. He never called. I spent the first month alternately crying and contemplating suicide. One day I hit rock bottom and tried to end my life. Rachel found me and called an ambulance. They pumped my stomach and saved my worthless ass. While I was in the hospital, I had to see a psychiatrist. We talked about what I had done to get to this point in my life. She said she had heard it all before and recommended me to another psychiatrist who specializes in grief counseling. She said that divorce is just as devastating as the death of a loved one, and grief counseling would do me a lot of good. So I started talking with him twice a week. Eventually, I realized my act and decided that I didn't really want to die. I wanted to live again, but to live with Marty. My therapist helped me develop a plan to get my head in order, to understand why I did what I did, and how to try to get my life back with Marty. But he was very careful when he said I might never get it back. Deep down, I knew he was right, but I had to try. 4 months after leaving Boston, I received a final judgment of divorce. I received a lump sum of $100,000 when the property was divided, and a check for that amount was enclosed. I received no alimony, no part of Marty's business or his pension. I agreed to let Marty sell the house and split the profits. 2 months of psychotherapy seemed like a waste of time as I stood gazing sadly at the remnants of my former life. And here I sit, looking at the ground, at 35,000 feet, going over my screwed-up life in my mind. I've made some huge mistakes, but I've also come a long way in understanding their causes and can guarantee they will never happen again. Hopefully, when I get to Boston, there will be someone there who will listen to my story and sympathize with me. Maybe I can get my life back. Maybe he'll love me again. But maybe he won't. Part 3. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the captain speaking to you. We're about 10 minutes into the flight from Logan International Airport, and I've turned on the seatbelt sign, so please return to your seats and... Wait, when did I fall asleep? The last thing I remember was the woman in the middle seat asking me if I was okay. It was embarrassing. I didn't even realize I was crying. I tried to smile when I lied to her that I was fine, but I don't think she believed me. She handed me a tissue, looked at me with a kind look and said, "Whatever problems we have in this life, God is watching over us. Just talk to him." That was something new. Sure, I've talked to a therapist, but all I got was a bunch of stuff about low self-esteem, insecurity, and narcissistic tendencies. Maybe it wouldn't hurt to have a little talk with him? When I got on board, I thought revisiting everything that had happened over the past couple years would be helpful. But all I did was slap myself in the face again with all the bad decisions I had made, all the lies I had told, and all the pain I had caused. At 35,000 feet, the suffering was as intense as it had been a year before. I relived the worst time of my life and came to the conclusion that I didn't need this. I thought I could find something I didn't already know, something to help me prepare for another encounter with Marty. But I didn't find anything. Everything was the same as before. I'm a liar. I'm a liar. And I've ruined the lives of a dozen or more people. Why? Because I wanted to be a big executive. I wanted to be important. I wanted to be somebody. And now I'm nothing. I'm Cheryl Smith. I used to be Cheryl Hughes, but I blew it. One of the terms of my divorce was to never use my married last name again, so I had to change it to Smith. I think that hurt me more than anything else. I didn't need alimony. I didn't need our apartment. I didn't even need our savings. All I wanted was Marty. But it was never meant to be. I had hurt him too much, and nothing I could say, no apology, no excuse, no justification, no explanation could cauterize the wound in his heart. I had completely destroyed the man I loved and myself at the same time. I rented a car and headed west on Highway 90 toward my old home in Waltham. I'd taken this route to and from Boston 1,000 times, but this time it seemed strange. I wasn't driving home, but to my former home, the place where my ex-husband lived, where my former life had been lived. A chill ran down my spine. I felt like a stranger in a strange land. I also felt a stray tear fall onto my chest. With good traffic and luck, the trip would only take 30 minutes. Traffic was good, and luck was on my side. Plus, Saturday morning traffic was usually pretty busy unless Boston College had a football game in the afternoon. I pulled up to my old house 25 minutes later, but I couldn't move. I froze behind the wheel of my rental car, too scared to do what I had traveled 1,000 miles to do. I sat there for a very long time, thinking about the first words I would say to Marty. "Hey, Marty, surprise!" No, too flippant. "Hi, Marty. Judging by the look on your face, you're surprised to see me." No. His expression might not be surprise, but fear or worse, hate. "Hey, Marty. Before you slam the door in my face, I want you to know that I came all this way to apologize to you." Not bad, but don't give him an excuse to slam the door in my face. "Hi, Marty. I'm here to apologize for everything. May I take a moment of your time to talk to you?" Oh well, I'd have to make do. I should have spent my time on the plane thinking about what I was going to say to him, not reliving all the shit I'd done to him. I took a deep breath and walked to the door. Everything looked the same, except the azaleas on either side of the walkway were gone. I had given them to him when we moved into this house. He always loved those azaleas. The beautiful white blooms in the spring always made him smile, and when he smiled, I smiled too. I pressed the doorbell and waited nervously. "Yes?" a man said, opening the door. It wasn't Marty. "Where's Marty?" The man who opened the door was tall and thin and appeared to be wearing only a plaid robe and slippers. He smiled a half smile and looked at me with some apprehension. "Who's at the door, Josh?" Another man, a little heavier and also in a plaid robe and slippers, came up behind the first and put his hand on the taller man's shoulder. "Can we help you?" the second man asked. I didn't know what to answer. I expected Marty to stand there and even had an opening line prepared, but instead the two middle-aged men, who looked like they had just gotten out of bed, looked at me like I was some kind of lunatic. I'm looking for Marty Hughes," was all I could squeeze out of myself. "Oh, Mr. Hughes moved out about 4 or 5 months ago," the other man replied. "When exactly, Josh?" The first man, that was Josh's name, replied, "Over 6 months now, he moved in just before Christmas. Remember, we moved in after New Year's, and the house was empty for a while." "That's right," the second man said. Once again, my mouth and mind didn't want to work together. I just stood there with my mouth open. A few seconds passed, but I stammered, I, I'm looking for Marty Hughes." The two men smiled and said in unison, "You already said that." They turned to each other, laughed loudly, and hugged each other. I felt my cheeks grow hot. "I'm sorry," I said, embarrassed. "I'm his wife. Well, I used to be. I came here to talk, and I used to live here. Yeah, we heard about you. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean it the way it sounded," Josh said. Randy, what did the real estate agent say? Randy, the other man, replied, She said the former owners were getting divorced and selling the house as part of the property division. She didn't go into details, saying only that it wasn't amicable. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that, Josh said. Would you like to come in? Maybe have a cup of coffee and look around. We've changed a lot of things and it looks amazing now. No, thanks. I think I'd better be going. You wouldn't happen to have a new address for Mr. Hughes, would you? Both men looked at each other puzzled. No, I don't think we have one, Randy replied. We've never met Mr. Hughes. We've only worked with his real estate agent. I'm sorry. Thank you, I replied with the smile I was capable of. I'm sorry to have bothered you. I turned and walked back to my car. When I got to my car, another tear ran down my chest. I drove off with no idea of my destination. I ended up at a little restaurant that Marty and I used to go to often. I sat there drinking coffee and contemplating what to do next. Marty sometimes worked Saturdays, so I might be able to catch him at the office. His office was downtown, not that far from where I worked when I lived here. I hurriedly finished my coffee and headed back towards the airport in downtown. I had to drive past my former place of employment, and I felt anxious about being there. The last time I had been on that street was when I met with Enterprise's lawyers about my lawsuit. I was very upset at the time, and don't remember the meeting very well. I do, however, remember the names the lawyer called me and how I was floored by each one. I parked in the parking lot next to Marty's office and walked into his building. I don't think he's up there, the elderly security guard said. But you can go upstairs and check. The door was locked, and I could see through the glass part of it that there was no light on. I noticed something else too. It used to say M. Hughes, CPA, on the door, but now it said Hughes and Associates. I wondered what that meant. I got back in the car, pondering where to look next. I didn't feel like doing it, but I knew someone on his staff could tell me where he was. If anyone knew, it was Mandy. Her name and address were still listed in my phone book as Marty's contact at work. I entered her address into the car's GPS and drove off. As I drove, I had a glimmer of hope. Mommy, there's someone at the door, a girl dressed in a football uniform called out. I waited the longest until Mandy came out onto the porch and quietly closed the door behind her. What the hell do you want? She growled at me, bile dripping from every word. I'm looking for Marty, I replied softly. I came to talk to him, to apologize. When I got to our house, he wasn't there anymore. I came here knowing you knew where he was. Do you have his address? Yes, I have his address, but it will be more than a day in hell before I give it to you. How dare you show your face in these parts again? What's the matter? Didn't you cause enough pain and suffering last time you were here? Come back to see if you can finish the job and completely destroy it? There's no way I'm letting you hurt that man again. He's done with you. He moved on. You're just a bad memory, a nightmare that pops up every now and then to remind him how lucky he is that you're gone. Just go. Crawl back under the rock you crawled out of. She turned and walked away into the house, slamming the door in my face. All hope of finding Marty was gone. As I drove away, I cried, really cried, loud and hard. I had to pull into a fast food parking lot to try to recover. I couldn't drive and sob at the same time. I must have filled 3 or 4 napkins before I calmed down enough to realize. The people sitting at the tables outside were looking at me. My body was still shaking and I couldn't think straight, but I slowly began to come to my senses out of desperation. I heard a knock on the window of the car next to me. I rolled the window down a little. Are you okay, miss? Asked a gray-haired man. I snorted and wiped my nose again. I'll be fine, I replied. I just had a really bad shock, that's all. I'll be fine in a few minutes. Thank you for your concern. The man walked over to one of the tables and sat down next to a little boy, about 9 or 10 years old. He continued to watch me out of the corner of his eye, but then turned his attention to the little boy. His son, or maybe his grandson, I thought. They were so cozy together. So happy. Shit, I said under my breath. Marty's dad. I knew exactly where to go next. Marty's dad would probably help me get in touch with Marty. Marty's dad and I had always been friends, even through the divorce and everything. I quickly typed his address into the GPS and rushed away. The drive was a little over an hour. I knew the way without the GPS, but I wanted someone to tell me what to do and which way to turn. My mind wasn't working very well at that point. When I pulled up to his house, I was in for a big shock. There was a big white "for sale" sign hanging right in the middle of the yard. I got out of the car and walked to the door. Hanging on the front door handle was a real estate agent's lockbox and a note that read, "Call Ash Real Estate if needed." Looking through the windows next to the front door, I saw bare wooden floors and blank walls. The house was empty. Marty's father no longer lived here. He was gone too. I sank heavily onto the porch and began to cry again. Most of my tears had already fallen after visiting Mandy, but still, some new ones found their way out. This trip in search of the man I still loved was proving to be a failure. At every turn, I was rebuffed. Marty might as well be on the moon if I couldn't find anyone to tell me where he was. I couldn't take it anymore and started looking around the neighborhood. Across the street lived an elderly woman working in the garden. Maybe she would know something about Marty's father. "Mr. Hughes died 3 months ago," the old woman said from the other side of the old fence. "Just after New Year's, I think. He had a heart attack and died right there in his driveway. I understand he was under a lot of stress for some reason. He probably just succumbed to the pressure. It's sad. He was a nice man, quiet but sweet. His son and daughter and their friends cleaned the house. They are good people, just like their father. Much of what was in the house they gave away to neighbors. They gave me a very nice set of porcelain figurines and his gas grill. It's sad. Very sad." I walked to my car in a daze. Luckily, no cars were passing by, or I might have left too. My trip had come to an end. I had flown 1,000 miles to talk to the only man in the world I had feelings for, and I couldn't find him. At every turn, I failed. I could have gone home. Then I gave up. On my way out of town, I stopped by the cemetery where Marty's father was buried. I wanted to pay my respects and say goodbye. I loved Marty's father. He was a kind and wise man. He was the one who advised me to seek counseling, to find a therapist and ask for help. I knew he already had a grave waiting for him next to his beloved wife Beverly. I walked up the hill and saw his name embossed on the dark granite headstone. I couldn't cry. I had no tears. Now that I wanted to cry, I couldn't. I made a promise to myself that when I got home, I would have a long talk with God. As I stood looking at the grave, I saw a white wicker basket full of flowers leaned against one side of the headstone. It also had a card attached to it. I picked up the small card and read it. "We miss you with all our hearts. Love you always. Brenda and Marty." The flowers were from Marty and his sister, and the handwritten inscription on the card was from a local florist. The florist was on the way out of town, so if I stopped by and asked nicely, they might be able to give me Marty's address. That was my last hope. The young man at the flower store got $100 richer, and I got Marty's address. For the first time in days, I smiled. I knew where Marty was. I was going to see him after all. I had given up too soon. The GPS navigator led me down the road, and I followed it, knowing I would see him. The trip took an hour and a half, judging by the clock on the dashboard, but in my mind it was minutes. I stopped in front of the address the florist had given me and saw a pretty white bungalow with blue shutters. On the porch were 2 wicker rocking chairs and a small wicker table. The lawn was neat and the bushes around the porch were trimmed. The mailbox out front said Hughes, and I knew I had found it. There was a driveway by the house, but no car. Terrified to think he wasn't home, I went to the door and knocked. Nothing, no answer, he wasn't home. I stood there for ages. There was no answer. I was crushed. For the 100th time that day, I sat down and cried. So close, I lamented. but I was determined to wait for him. If he wasn't home by dark, I would go and find a place to sleep for the night and come back in the morning. Until then, I was going to sit in his rocking chair and wait. After an hour or so, I got bored and started walking around the house. Everywhere I saw Marty's touches. Two azalea bushes from our old house stood proudly in the middle of the rocky backyard garden. In the center of the garden stood an antique sundial that read, "Grow old with me, the best is yet to come." Marty said this Robert Browning quote was his favorite romantic saying. On the deck was a gas grill he'd bought just before. Well, just before the end. I could smell Marty everywhere. I could almost smell his aftershave. I was standing on the same grass he was. I was breathing the same air, enjoying the same sunlight. It was wonderful. But Marty wasn't there. I had to be patient. I would see him eventually. I walked up to the porch again and froze, looking around. The house and the whole neighborhood looked exactly like the one Marty had talked about buying when we decided it was time to have kids. The color of the house was perfect. The front gardens were perfect. The other houses in the neighborhood were perfect. Even the little kiddie park on the next street was perfect. It was exactly as Marty described it. His perfect place to start a family. This was supposed to be our home when we had kids. But, it wasn't our home. It was his home. I was no longer a part of his life. A while later, I wandered into a small children's park and sat at a small table made in the shape of a giant green turtle. I thought about all the things Marty and I had talked about when we had kids. He had so many plans and knew exactly what he wanted. He even knew how many kids we were going to have. 2, a boy and a girl. I think he even had names picked out already. But I ruined everything with my ambition and stupidity. Now we'd never have children together, never have a little house in the suburbs, and we wouldn't live happily ever after. But if Marty came home and I explained to him how sorry I was and how much I still loved him, maybe he would forgive me. Then maybe we would have lived happily ever after. This time the tears were enough. I sank down on the table, wrapped my arms around my head and cried. Deep sobs burst from my chest. I stared into the bottomless pit and sobbed. And for the 100th time, I wanted to die. Without Marty, my life had no meaning. Oh God, my heart ached. In the midst of all my tears, I felt a hand on my shoulder. I wiped my eyes with my sleeve and turned around. There he was. Marty was standing behind me with his hand on my shoulder. He had a sad smile on his face, but he was there for me. I jumped up from the small table, threw myself around his neck and hugged him like he could fly away at any moment. I cried on his neck. I repeated his name over and over. I told him how much I missed him and how much I loved him. He just put his arms around me and let me cry on his neck. And that's when I saw the others. There were 3 women standing at the edge of the small park. I recognized Mandy and Adriana, but I didn't know the young Asian woman. All 3 stood with their arms crossed over their chests, and if looks could kill, I was already on my way to the afterlife. "Hey, Cheryl," Marty said in my ear. "Do you want to come in?" I just clung tightly to him, afraid to do anything to break the spell. I'd found him again, and I wasn't going to let go. Never. "Come on," he said. "Let's go inside." He released my arms from his neck and took my hand in his. Slowly, he began to walk up the hill toward the others, pulling me along behind him. We walked to his house hand in hand, with the others following some distance behind. No one said anything. When we entered the house, he let go of my hand and told me where the bathroom was. I realized I hadn't gone to the bathroom since I left the airport. There, I took a moment to wash my face and apply fresh makeup. I looked pretty bad after a full day of crying. He was standing outside the door when I came out. "Let's go out on the deck," he said quietly. "I have a lot to tell you, and I'm guessing you didn't come all this way for my cooking. You probably want to talk about something we never talked about. I think the time has come. Let's go." 3 women were working in the kitchen preparing something to eat when we walked by. No one said anything to any of us. We just walked silently out the back door onto the deck, and they kept looking at me through the bullets. We sat in complete silence for a long time, just looking at each other, hoping someone would say something and break the eerie tension. I don't think either of us knew where to start or how to go about it. I wanted to tell him I was sorry. I wanted to confess all my sins. I wanted to lie down on the deck, kiss his feet, and beg for forgiveness. I wanted to tell him how much I still loved him. I wanted to tell him everything that was in my heart. But I didn't know how to begin. I had traveled 1,000 miles to see him, and now that I was sitting across from him, I couldn't say anything. "How are you, Cheryl?" he asked. "I'm better now, Marty. How are you?" "Good. But I don't think you came here to exchange platitudes. Why don't you tell me what's been going on in your life since—" He fell silent, looking at his hands. I opened the floodgates and let it all out. "Marty, I don't know how much you know, so I'm just going to tell you everything, but just the highlights. The lawsuit against Enterprise was settled between attorneys. We didn't have to go to court or arbitration. They paid me a decent amount of money, and the money you gave me was enough to move to Cincinnati and start over. My cousin Rachel helped me a lot. You remember Rachel? She was at our wedding. She was the one with the limp. So she found me a place to live and helped me find a new job. I work for a software company and I teach clients how to use our systems. It's a good job, and the people there are nice. Since I left Boston, I've been seeing a psychologist. He has helped me understand why I acted the way I did. The most important thing I realized is that everything, and I mean everything, is my fault. You did nothing to cause any of this. I am to blame. You were just an innocent bystander. I know I apologized to you 1,000 times before our divorce, but I said it every time, and I'm saying it now. I am so sorry for what I did to you and to us. I know words can't change what happened, but I want you to hear them anyway. I'm sorry, Marty, for everything. After you found out about everything, I wasn't myself for a long time. I even tried to kill myself once. Unfortunately, I didn't succeed. My therapist told me it was a desperate act to get your attention. Maybe it was, but I didn't do it to put more pain on your shoulders. I did it to get out from under my own power. But you never found out what I did. Rachel didn't call and tell you. Like I said, I was totally confused. I didn't think suicide would hurt you. And what I did to the managers at Enterprise was something else I didn't think would hurt you. I thought if you didn't find out, it wouldn't hurt you. How wrong I was. I never realized how much I hurt myself, which in turn hurt you. My therapist also told me something I never knew, but looking back on my life, I realize he was right. He said that I had little confidence in my abilities and low self-esteem. This means that I believed that I could not get promoted because of my strengths. This is the main reason why I did what I did. Having fun with Brad would have guaranteed a promotion. It was only later that I found out that the CEO had already spoken to the board about my promotion. I made an incredibly bad decision starting with Brad, and it was out of the control of the other three. I'm not going to make excuses and say I was forced into it. I went into it of my own free will. I thought it would stop when I got promoted. I didn't think about anything more than a promotion. Marty, I don't know how you found out about this, and it doesn't matter. All I know is that you did. When you sent everyone in the company an email with a videotape of me and 4 managers, I was devastated. I deserved it. I know that now. And I would have accepted any punishment if you had only listened to me and heeded my apology. But you didn't. When your lawyer told me you refused to talk to me and didn't want to see me anymore, I went a little crazy. I destroyed the only man I ever loved and will ever love, and you didn't want to talk to me. And God, what I did to those people's families. Do you know that 3 of them divorced because of what we did? The 4th one's wife said she could make him even more miserable in her marriage to him than by divorcing him. I guess that's what she's doing. Marty, I helped break up 4 families, not 5, including ours. Their wives and children didn't deserve that. You didn't deserve it. All because I wanted the job. When I filed the lawsuit, Enterprise fired 3 of them, and the 4th retired. I don't know what happened to them because I haven't had contact with any of them, but I'm sure I ruined their lives too. That's over a dozen people devastated because of my ambition. The lies I told you were also hateful. To cover up what I did, I lied about everything. Believe me, Marty, I've never lied to you until now. From the day we got married, I've always shared everything with you. And then the lying started. I started with Brad, and I lied to cover it up. For that, I'm truly sorry. I hope someday you'll find it in your heart to trust me again. If not, I'll understand. I want to say a couple more things before I start crying again. I hope you'll believe me when I tell you that everything I had with those men didn't mean half of what one night in your loving arms meant. It's a cliche, see, I know. I never did with them what I didn't do with you. I have to say I loved being with him, but it wasn't the same as being with you. And most importantly, I never once told them I loved them. I told them all kinds of stuff, but I never said, I love you. I only said it to you and always meant it. And God knows, I love you as much now as I ever did. The last year has been hell for me. Not having you in my life has turned me into a half man, and I'm guessing it's been just as hard on you. But Marty, I'll do anything to get you back. I'll take any punishment. I'll accept any conditions you want. I'll make any sacrifice. Tell me what you want, and I'll do it. No matter what, I'll do anything. If you want me to fall on the floor and kiss your feet, I'll do it. If you want to publicly humiliate me in front of my family and friends, I'll gladly stand and endure. If you want to get revenge by cheating on me while I sit and watch, you can. Do whatever you want, just let me back into your life. Please, I'm begging you. I started sobbing and couldn't finish. Marty sat in silence for a few minutes until I pulled myself together again. I'm so sorry. I said I wouldn't cry until I was done. Marty, I'm so sorry to hear about your father. He was a wonderful man, and I will always remember him fondly. I stopped by your parents' grave to pay my respects. That's how I found out where you lived. Please accept my apologies for letting you down. If you can find strength in your heart, please forgive me for all I have done. And if you have any feeling left in you for me, please tell me you love me again. More than anything, I want to come back to you. I want to be Mrs. Marty Hughes again. I miss you, and I pray that you'll take me back. Please, Marty, I love you. I covered my eyes with my hands and let another tear fall. The whole time I was talking, Marty sat in his chair and listened. He didn't move or say anything. I only occasionally raised my gaze to his face the entire time I was talking. I didn't have the courage to look him in the eye. I couldn't tell what he was thinking. Excuse me, Adriana said, poking her head out of the door. If you want something to eat, we'll put dinner on the table now. When you want to take a break, come on in. Just as quickly as she had appeared, she disappeared. Don't you want to take a break? Asked Marty. We can grab a bite to eat if you want. I'd realized a while ago that I hadn't gone to the bathroom since I'd left the airport, and now I realized I hadn't eaten anything either. I'd like to clean up a little first if that's okay with you, I said, wiping a tear from my cheek. Marty walked me to the bathroom again, and then to the dining room. When we walked in, I saw that there were already 5 people sitting at the table. A tall, red-haired man and a slightly intimidating-looking girl with black hair and lots of piercings and tattoos joined the 3 women as Marty and I talked outside. As we all sat and ate in silence, everyone studied my every move, waiting for I don't know what. Dinner was a living hell. I wanted to hear Marty's story and sat there playing with my food, hoping he would tell me he loved me too. Waiting for him to say he wanted me back was agony. After dinner, everyone took the dirty dishes into the kitchen and just stood around in awkward stillness. When Marty excused himself to go wash the dishes, the atmosphere in the group changed. Mandy and Adriana cornered me by the refrigerator and faced me nose to nose. Mandy glared at me and said, I want you out of here as soon as you say what you came here to say. I told you that I won't let you do anything to hurt him, and I mean it. If I have to drag your slutty ass back to the trailer park you came from, by God, I will. After Mandy finished, Adriana joined her. Yeah, bitch. If that man sheds a single tear because of something you said or did today, I will find you and stomp your sorry ass into the ground. Marty is our friend, and we don't want him to get hurt any more than he already has. Pleading for forgiveness and asking him to love you again will hurt him even more. He is in a better place now and has moved on. Forget about him and come home. You left him. Eddie. I looked back and saw the other three standing there watching. The one with the piercings was smiling at me in a way that gave me goosebumps. I wanted to run away and hide, but then Marty came back and saved my hide. Cheryl, let's go back outside and finish our conversation. I'll get us something to drink. I walked out the door and stood on the deck, watching everyone through the window. At one point, the little Asian girl said something to Marty, and he smiled. It was the first smile I'd seen on his face in a very, very long time. I missed him far more than I could have imagined. It pained me to see someone else put it on that face. Marty brought 2 bottles of water, and as we returned to our seats, he began. Cheryl, I appreciate your candor in talking today about what's been going on with you since. Well, since everything fell apart. I sense a change in you. Maybe you've grown up. Maybe you've faced your demons. Or maybe you've really realized the consequences of your actions. Whatever the case, I want to ask a question that I really need an honest answer to. Then I'm going to tell you about myself. After that, we can talk about us. Cheryl, my attorney asked you a simple question several times that you were unwilling or unable to answer. He said that each time he asked, you only threw a tantrum. I don't want to hurt you, but I need an answer. Without one, I think this conversation is over. Okay? There you go. Why did you point your finger at the phone and at me when you hung up after talking to me when you were with those guys? I knew he would insist on answering that question, and I think I was now ready to tell him. Marty, I've done a lot of stupid things in my life, but I think the one where you stubbed your toe on me was probably the stupidest, at least the rudest. My therapist and I have talked about it a lot, and now I can tell you why I did it. There's no easy answer here, and it's not just one thing, but the main reason I did it was because I was trying to convince myself and the man who was with me at the time that you were a rotten, worthless husband. I thought that if you treated me badly, I wouldn't feel guilty about cheating on you. Well, I was wrong. I felt so damn guilty every time I touched one of those guys. I thought that if you acted angry, it wouldn't be my fault. Once again, I was wrong. I was the bad guy in the story, and you were just an innocent bystander. In retrospect, those are stupid thoughts, but that's what I was thinking. Pointing my finger at you, I was saying that you didn't matter, but the one who was with me did. It was a brazen lie, and it really hurt my ass. I never wanted that. I didn't want you to back off. It was just a bullshit play to cover up my guilt. I'm sorry I did it, and I'm even more sorry you saw it. I apologize for doing it at all. I watched Marty's face as he digested my explanation. Every word I said was the unadulterated truth. I was just playing. I meant no disrespect to him. I thought it was harmless at the time. But I couldn't be wrong. Okay, I understand what you're saying. You did it to reduce your guilt. I can understand that. Cheryl, I believe you're being honest with me right now. The truth is, that little act hurt me more than anything else. I think it's what made any chance of reliving what you did impossible. I still have flashbacks of how you did it, and it still hurts like hell. And that's why you don't want to talk to me? Because I didn't answer that question? Well, yes, but only partly. I guess I used it as an excuse not to talk to you. I was so angry that I didn't want to do or say anything that would hurt either of us, and I certainly didn't want to go through all that pain again. It took my friends a long time to get me to the point where I could talk about you. Seeing you here today is hard enough. We leaned back in our chairs and took a sip of water, each to catch our breath. Okay, Cheryl, as you do, I'm going to tell you an abbreviated version of my life over the past year. When I hit the enter button on the computer and sent out all those emails with videos of you and your lovers, I was furious. The kind of furious I had never been in my life. I could have killed someone, and that someone could have been you. Mandy said I looked calm on the outside, but inside there was a giant volcano erupting in my heart. I wanted to hurt you. Hell, I wanted to hurt everyone. I knew I'd destroy everything you'd built through your work, but I didn't care. Taking away what you loved was the best revenge I could think of. And yes, that included me. I just wanted you to be in as much pain as I was. And sending letters to your boss's wives was my way of getting back at those who took things from me. They took my wife from me and helped destroy my marriage. I blamed you for being a part of it, but they were just as guilty. I lashed out at everyone, and everyone paid dearly for it, including myself. Over the next few months, I received threatening phone calls and emails, some from enterprise employees and some from friends of your four lovers. I spoke to the wives of these men and tried to apologize, but they were too hurt to listen. One even spit in my face. Nevertheless, all four took copies of the footage to help with the divorce proceedings. I stayed with my father for a couple months, trying to get my life in order. He was great, gave me lots of helpful advice and helped me calm down and see things for what they were. After a few weeks, I saw in his eyes the same stress I was experiencing myself. I stopped talking to him and started thinking for myself. By the time I got home, you were long gone. I didn't try to find you or call you or anything. I was glad you were gone, even though it left a hole in my soul the size of the Grand Canyon. I think I cried for 3 days straight before my little group of like-minded people came and said they were having an intervention. It took an entire weekend, but by the end of the second day, I was laughing again. After that, Mandy and Adriana became like mothers to me. They told me what to do, when to do it, and when to finish. I needed that. Jan stayed with me day and night, making sure I ate right, exercised, and made sure things at work didn't go wrong. Even Jackie stopped by from time to time. She kept trying to convince me to get a tattoo, but I refused. She later said she knew I wouldn't do it. She was just trying to get me out of my comfort zone of misery and back to reality. I became too comfortable in my sadness. One weekend, Red brought a bunch of action movie DVDs, pizza, and beer, and we had a man's night out that lasted 2 whole days. Ian really got on me for leaving pizza boxes and empty beer cans all over the living room, and for not showering all weekend. All in all, it was pretty heartbreaking. I wallowed in self-pity for about 3 months before I woke up one day and started living again. The first thing I did was put our apartment up for sale. By then, you had already signed the divorce papers, so I had no reason to stay there. Too many memories. It took a few months to sell, the housing market being what it was, but by then, I was living here. From what I understand, our old house was bought by a nice couple. Anyway, my move here was a new beginning. It was a break with the past, and I needed that more than anything. When I got the notice that our divorce was final, I started to roll down the slippery slope. Jan stayed by my side until I found my way back. From that point on, I worked more than ever, stayed at home tending to my little bungalow, and spent as much time with friends as I could. They have been my support. I don't know if I would have survived without them. I don't know whether to tell you this or not, but my little video of your adventures showed up on the website about a month after I sent it to everyone. Red found it, but I didn't ask him how. I didn't post it there, honestly, and I'm sorry it got there. I don't know what you can do about it, but I'll give you the URL anyway. I put the proceeds from the sale of the house in the bank, and your half is a little over $22,000. I'll write you a check tonight. I'm sorry I didn't send it to you sooner. I just didn't want to meet your eyes. Cowardly of me, I know. Before dinner, you asked me a couple things. I think I can answer them now. Anyway, I've been thinking about them for a while now. You asked me to forgive you. Cheryl, I forgive you. I forgive you, but for completely selfish reasons. I can't carry around all this hatred for you, so by forgiving you, I'm relieving myself of those feelings. Cheryl, I don't hate you anymore, but I also don't love you anymore. Sure, I can forgive you, but I can't forget what you did. Believe it or not, the few times I watched you with your lovers destroyed all the good memories we had together. Gone are our hopes and dreams. It's all gone, Cheryl. All the good memories, all the good feelings, all the plans we ever made, it's all gone. And the hostility I felt is gone too. Now I'm learning to trust, love, and believe all over again with a clean slate. So I think you see where I'm going with this. Cheryl, I don't have any feelings for you anymore. All the love is gone. I once loved you more than anything in the world, and now, someday there will be a Mrs. Marty Hughes, but it won't be you. I can't look at you without seeing you bent over your desk with some guy behind you, and I can't look at you without seeing you pointing a finger at me. I'm sorry if this ruins all your hopes of reconciliation, but I can't go back. It's too painful a part of my past. I'm moving forward without you. I was devastated. I just sat there and sobbed. My life was over. I would never be with the love of my life. Oh God, why me? Muttered to myself over and over. Marty got up and brought me a box of tissues and left me to cry alone. When I looked up a few minutes later, I saw him in the kitchen surrounded by his friends, with a little Asian girl resting her head on his shoulder. Now I knew what they meant when Mandy and Adriana told me he'd moved away. I was the past, and his new Asian girl was his future. I sat there crying until the daylight started to fade. I gathered my strength to walk through the kitchen and into the bathroom. I combed my hair again and gathered my courage before going outside. Everyone was standing in the living room talking to Marty. When he saw me, he held out an envelope. This is your portion of the condo sale, and on the back, I wrote the URL to the video. Just like that, it was over. My hopes of getting him back were gone. Also gone were the last vestiges of self-respect. I had to start my life over, but without him. Marty walked me to my car. I took his hand one last time and said goodbye quietly, kissing the cheek of the man I loved, but had destroyed. I opened the car door and stood still for a moment, wondering if I had the courage to look back at him one last time. I found enough strength to turn my head. What I saw ended my life. Marty was standing on the curb with his arm around the waist of a small Asian girl and hers around his. Behind him in a row stood Mandy, Adriana, a tall red-haired man, and an intimidating girl with piercings. Each of them held a hand in front of them with the middle finger extended upward. The message was loud and clear. Back off. I now fully understood Marty's pain. The end. If you haven't watched the first part of this video, the link will be in the description. Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed it. So subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.